My name is Zachary, and for 10 years, Melissa was my everything. We built a life together, a home filled with laughter and dreams of a future that seemed unshakable. I was a software engineer, working hard to provide, while Melissa, with her vibrant spirit, was a freelance graphic designer. Our life was a comfortable tapestry woven with shared jokes, quiet evenings, and the promise of forever. At least, that's what I thought. The first thread unraveled on our 10th anniversary. I'd planned a surprise trip to the very same place I proposed. I came home early, flowers in hand, my heart thumping with excitement. But the house was empty. A simple note on the kitchen counter read, "Zach, I need some space. Gone to visit my sister for a few days." No anniversary wish, no explanation. A cold dread washed over me. I called her sister, who sounded genuinely confused. Melissa wasn't there. The next few days were a blur of unanswered calls and frantic texts. When she finally returned, she looked different. There was a hardness in her eyes I'd never seen before. She sat me down and delivered the blow that shattered my world. She'd been unhappy, she said, feeling trapped. She confessed to having an affair. She didn't say it with remorse, but with a defiant sort of pride. She called it finding her freedom, an exploration of her true self. The man's name was Julian, a charismatic artist she'd met at a gallery. She spoke of him not as a mistake, but as an awakening. To her, our marriage was a cage, and her infidelity was the key. The divorce was swift and brutal. Melissa didn't want our home or our shared assets in the traditional sense. She wanted a clean break, a fresh start funded by what she called her rightful share. Her lawyer was aggressive, painting me as a neglectful, work-obsessed husband who stifled her creative soul. They argued she deserved more because my stable career had allowed her to be a kept woman, a term that made my blood boil. The court, swayed by her narrative of a repressed artist seeking liberation, awarded her a significant portion of my savings, the very savings I had earmarked for our future, for the family we had once planned. I was left with an empty house filled with ghosts of a life that was no longer mine, and a bank account that was a shadow of its former self. The betrayal was a physical ache in my chest. It wasn't just the affair. It was her justification. She had twisted our decade of love into a narrative of oppression to justify her actions and profit from them. That's when the grief began to curdle into a cold, hard resolve. She thought she had won her freedom. I would show her the true cost of it. My revenge wasn't going to be a loud, angry outburst. It would be silent, meticulous, and devastating. I started by looking into Julian. It turned out our charismatic artist had a less than stellar reputation. He had a history of charming his way into the lives of financially comfortable women, only to leave a trail of broken hearts and empty bank accounts. He was a predator disguised as a bohemian soul. This was my entry point. I created a fake online persona, Alex, an affluent art collector with a passion for emerging avant-garde artists. I built a sophisticated website for a non-existent gallery, complete with glowing reviews and articles about Alex's discerning taste and generous patronage. I then used this persona to approach Julian online, expressing immense admiration for his work, and hinting at a major acquisition for my new European gallery. Julian, blinded by ego and greed, took the bait immediately. He was all too eager to talk, to send me photos of his work, and to boast about his artistic vision. During our conversations, I subtly guided him, encouraging him to invest in a bigger studio and more expensive materials to create a masterpiece worthy of an international debut. I told him that to be taken seriously on the European stage, he needed to present himself not as a struggling artist, but as a successful one. Meanwhile, Melissa was living her liberated life. She and Julian had rented a trendy, overpriced loft downtown, funded almost entirely by her settlement money. She was posting endlessly on social media, photos of them at exclusive parties, art shows, and lavish dinners. Every post was a performance, a desperate attempt to prove how happy and free she was. She was burning through her money at an alarming rate, and Julian was happily helping her spend it. My online relationship with Julian intensified. I sent him a small but significant amount of money through an untraceable account as a good faith deposit for the future collection. It was just enough to convince him I was legitimate. He was ecstatic. He quit his part-time job, telling Melissa he was on the brink of a major breakthrough. He convinced her to pour even more of her remaining funds into his grand artistic vision, buying rare pigments and custom canvases. He was creating his magnum opus, a series of large-scale paintings he believed would make him famous. The final phase of my plan was set in motion. I arranged a meeting with Julian at a high-end restaurant to finalize the deal. I told him my flight was arriving that afternoon, and I'd meet him for dinner to sign the contracts. He was practically vibrating with excitement. He told Melissa this was the night their lives would change forever. They probably celebrated all afternoon, dreaming of a future funded by my fake millions. I, of course, never showed up. I was sitting in my car across the street, watching the restaurant's entrance. I saw Julian arrive, dressed in an expensive new suit, pacing anxiously. I watched as the minutes turned into an hour, then two. I saw his confident posture slump, his face shifting from anticipation to confusion, then to panic. He made call after call, all to the burner number I had long since discarded. The Alex persona, the gallery, the European debut, it all vanished into thin air, just like the money he'd been promised. The fallout was spectacular, and I watched it all unfold from a distance. Julian, humiliated and now broke, turned on Melissa. The man who was supposed to be her spiritual and artistic soulmate revealed his true colors. The arguments I heard through mutual acquaintances were volcanic. He accused her of pressuring him, of not having enough faith, of being the reason for his failure. The liberated bohemian dream couple imploded under the weight of financial ruin and shattered egos. Within a month, they were evicted from their loft. Julian disappeared, likely off to find his next victim. Melissa, with no money, no home, and no partner, was forced to crawl back to her parents' house. The vibrant, free woman I saw on social media was gone, replaced by someone who looked lost and broken. The last I heard, she was working a retail job at the mall, the same one we used to walk through as teenagers. I don't feel joy or satisfaction when I think about it. I just feel a quiet sense of closure. She saw our marriage as a prison, and cheating as her escape. She built her new life on the rubble of mine, celebrating her freedom while I was left to pick up the pieces. But a life built on betrayal is a house of cards. My revenge wasn't about destroying her. It was about holding up a mirror. I took away the money, and her fantasy world collapsed, revealing the ugly truth underneath. She didn't find freedom. She just found a different kind of cage, one of her own making. I've since sold our old house and moved to a new city. I'm building a new life, one based on honesty and self-respect. My revenge wasn't dark. It was just a reckoning. It gave me back the one thing she tried to take away, my own future. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've been through something similar, know that the best revenge is building a better life for yourself. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.